Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to a brand new episode of Serial Saturday. Future Brina here. I just wanted to jump in here at the beginning of this video and let you know that this video was actually filmed well over a month ago, and you can check out the card right here to see me create this beautiful masterpiece and also find out why I've been away from YouTube for a month. So I just wanted to let you know that this footage was filmed a while ago, and I had fully intended on uploading this video before October, but then I decided to do 31 Days of Halloween and time just really got away from me. I just decided to leave this video until now. With that being said, please enjoy the story of the vampire of Sacramento, Richard Chase. On May 23rd, 1950, Richard Trenton Chase is born. Not much is really known about his childhood other than that by the age of 10, he displayed not one or two, but all three traits of the McDonald triad. The three traits are bedwetting, animal cruelty, and pyromania. Richard definitely did all three. He not just was cruel to animals, but he liked to take them apart. It's said that the presence of any two of these factors, just two of them, not all three, which he has all three, are considered to be predictive behavior, I guess, of violent tendencies, particularly in relation to serial killers. Richard claims that his mother physically abused him as a child, though investigators have since claimed that to be false. And it also appears that his father was very abusive. I feel like that is just always something that happens with serial killers. Maybe not always, but every serial killer that I've looked into, they had super abusive home lives. So as Richard got older, he started to drink and use drugs as a way to cope with feelings, I guess. He was troubled, obviously. So, as a teenager, he discovered he was different from his peers. He liked women, but he was unable to achieve an erection from them. The only way he could was from killing animals. At 18, he was diagnosed with erectile dysfunction due to his suppressed rage. As a result of his unfortunate medical issue, Richard was unable to maintain a relationship, but he did have a few girlfriends in high school. And it was also around this time that he started to become a hypochondriac. He thought there were numerous things wrong with him. First of all, he thought he had a vitamin C deficiency, so he would take oranges and hold them to his forehead, thinking that his brain would absorb the vitamin C through diffusion. Yes, that makes sense. He also complained to doctors that his heart occasionally stopped beating. He thought his cranial bones had detached and were moving about freely in his brain. He thought he could feel it happening, so he decided to shave his head so that he could keep an eye on what was happening with his skull. He also told doctors that he thought his stomach was upside down and he believed his pulmonary artery had been stolen. Eventually, he became convinced that his heart would just stop beating, and the only way to cure what was wrong with him was by drinking animal blood. So he continued killing small animals such as rabbits, birds, squirrels, those kinds of things, and he just would drink the blood.
It's disgusting.
The thought of just drinking animal blood, no. If I thought my heart was going to stop beating or I had to drink this animal blood, I would just let my heart stop beating. I'm not going to drink the animal blood. No way. Surprisingly enough, Richard actually graduated high school, and shortly after graduation, he became convinced that his mother was poisoning him. At this point, I think his parents were just kind of like, we're done with you, you're 18, you finished high school, leave, So Richard rents an apartment with some friends, but things do not go well. So Richard is very excited to be out of his parents' house, and he takes full advantage of this newfound freedom by drinking a lot and partaking in marijuana and LSD on the regular. So clearly his inhibitions are lowered, and he decides that he wants to walk around his apartment in the nude all the time. Even when his roommates have company over, he's just walking around naked, and his roommates obviously didn't like that, so shortly after he moved in, they asked Richard to leave, but he just refused, and eventually the roommates left instead, leaving Richard completely and utterly alone for the very first time in his life. So, he's about to have some fun. He continues killing small animals, but now he's like, wait a minute, I can bring them back to my apartment. I don't have to just like sit here and drink the blood in the woods. Like, now he can take the animals back home. Once at the apartment, he would disembowel the animals and he would just devour them raw. Sometimes, though, he would put the carcass in a blender, add in some Coca-Cola, and he would drink that. Disgusting. I just want to know what makes a person think they need to drink blood, you know? Unfortunately for Richard, though, he was unable to pay rent on his apartment, so he ended up having to move back home until his father found another apartment for him. They really did not want him home. In 1973, when Richard was 23 years old, he spent some time in a mental institution, but there's not much known about this stay, other than he obviously didn't get the proper help he needed. Then in 1976, he was institutionalized again when he got blood poisoning after injecting himself with rabbit's blood. Yes, he's transitioned from just drinking the blood to now also injecting himself with it, like into his veins. He injected himself with rabbit's blood. And I would imagine that it takes quite a bit to scare the people who work in a mental institution, but Richard managed to scare everyone there. His thirst for blood was stronger than ever, and he wasn't just gonna give up because he was locked away in a mental institution, so he got creative. He had a window in his room that had bars on it to keep him from jumping out, I would assume, and if a bird landed on his windowsill, he would just reach out and snatch it, tear the head off, and then drink the blood of the bird. His strange fixation with blood got him the nickname Dracula while he was in this mental institution, and he didn't hate the nickname. But the whole drinking the blood of the birds was not the weirdest thing he did in the institution. He managed to get a hold of some syringes, and he would take the blood of the therapy dogs and inject that into himself. I don't know. This guy, man. During his stay in the institution this time, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and underwent treatments involving psychotropic drugs. And according to the doctors, later that year, he was showing improvement while on his medication. Doctors deemed he was no longer a danger to himself or others and released him into the care of his mother. And this is where things just go completely south. I mean, he really may have shown improvements on his medication. He could have been a completely different person. You know, like the whole bird blood and the dog blood could have come at the early end of his stay at the institution. I don't know. I don't have exact dates, but once his mother gets him home, she decides that he no longer needs to be on his medication, so she starts weaning him off of it. And then, as if that's not bad enough, like, she didn't just release a psychopath from a psych ward and then take him off his medication. She also got him his own apartment again. What is wrong with this woman? His parents really just failed him over and over and over again. Don't have kids if you're gonna treat them like this, you know? In mid-1977, so maybe like 6 months after his release, police officers in Pyramid Lake, Nevada start receiving reports about a man wandering around the lake aimlessly, his clothes covered in blood. Yep, sounds like Richard. Police respond and search Richard's truck, finding guns and a large bucket full of blood. When asked why he was covered in blood, Richard said that he was hunting and he had killed a cow. Police were able to determine that the blood was in fact cow's blood and no charges are filed. But like, how? I mean, they still should have done something about him killing the cow. Cows don't just roam free. They belong to people. So if he killed a cow, he definitely should have been arrested or something. Like, right? Am I the only one that thinks that here? Then on December 29th, 1977, Richard was sad and lonely because...
This is serious.
Richard was sad and lonely because his mom said he couldn't come home for Christmas. He also just had this urge to hurt somebody. Richard goes for a drive and stumbles upon Ambrose Griffin, a 51-year-old engineer and father of two, who just happens to be helping his wife bring groceries in from the car. Richard sees this man, he's alone, he takes his opportunity and he shoots Ambrose with a .22 caliber gun. 2 weeks later, Richard decides to take things a little bit further this time and attempts to enter the home of a woman, but because her doors were locked, he walked away. He later told detectives that he took locked doors as a sign that he wasn't welcome, but unlocked doors were an invitation to come inside. So keep your doors locked, folks. There was one incident where he did walk into a house that was unoccupied, but the couple returned home while he was pilfering their belongings. After they scared him away, they discovered that he had taken his time and urinated and defecated on their infant child's bed and clothing.
That's disgusting.
Throw it all away, burn it, buy new. Do not keep that. That is gross. Then on January 23rd, 1978, Teresa Wallen is 3 months pregnant and home alone when Richard breaks in and shoots her. He then proceeded to have intercourse with her corpse while stabbing her with a butcher's knife. He also removed multiple organs, cut off one of her nipples, and used an empty yogurt cup to drink her blood. As if that wasn't enough, he went one step further and took dog feces from her backyard and stuffed it down her throat. He's got something about feces too. I don't know. That's gross. This guy is literally just sick. He's just sick. He needs help. Teresa's husband arrived home after work. Yes, this happened during the day. Not even at night. During the day. He found her mutilated body on their bed and, not knowing if the intruder was still in the house, ran to the neighbors where they called the cops. The first officer that arrived on scene would later say that he suffered from nightmares for months following this incident because the scene was so horrific. Local police contacted FBI agent Robert Ressler, a man who's credited with coining the term serial killer. Yes, they definitely needed the help of an expert on this case. Robert was able to produce a profile for local police, and I have to say, it was pretty spot on. In his profile, he said that they would be looking for a white male ages 25 to 27. Richard was 27. He said that he would be extremely slovenly and unkempt, and evidence of the crime will be found at the residence. And we'll get there. Oh, and believe me, they find a lot of evidence, but we'll get there. He would have a history of mental illness, check, and will have been involved in drug use, double check. Will be a loner who does not associate with males or females, and will probably spend a great deal of his time in his own home. He says the person of interest would be unemployed and possibly receiving some form of disability money. If residing with anyone, it would be his parents. However, this is unlikely. No prior military record, high school or college dropout, probably suffering from one or more forms of paranoid psychosis. That is a very accurate description of Richard. I don't know if he was living off of disability or if his parents were just paying for his apartment for him, but yeah. Moving on. On January 27th, Richard enters a home occupied by 38-year-old Evelyn Maroth, her 6-year-old son Jason, her 22-month-old nephew David Ferreira, who she was babysitting, and her friend Daniel Meredith. Richard encountered Daniel in a hallway, shooting him dead with his .22 caliber revolver. Richard proceeds to shoot Jason twice in the head. Both Jason and Evelyn's bodies were found in Evelyn's bedroom, and Evelyn was partially cannibalized. Her stomach was cut open, and she had multiple organs missing. There had also been a failed attempt to remove one of her eyes, and her corpse had been sodomized. While Richard was in the process of all this, there was a knock on the front door which startled him into fleeing. He took off and Evelyn's car, taking baby David's body with him. Baby David was not found until March 24th, 1979, when a custodial worker noticed a discarded box behind the church, and inside they found the decapitated remains of baby David, although it wasn't easy to identify the remains. Back to the night of the killing, the visitor that startled Richard went to a neighbor's and they called the police. Police responded, and Evelyn's station wagon was found not far from her house. A manhunt consisting of approximately 65 officers began. They walked the streets, questioning passerbyers, as well as knocking on doors, asking if anyone had seen a thin, disheveled-looking Caucasian man who likely would be in blood-stained clothing. And it wasn't long before they got a lead. A young woman in her late 20s told officers that on the same day Teresa Wallen was murdered, January 23rd, around 11:30 a.m. or 12 p.m., she saw a man she went to high school with at a shopping mall that was less than a mile from Teresa's house. She was shocked by his appearance. He was pale, and he was so thin he looked emaciated. She said his clothing just hung from his body, and he had huge dark circles around his eyes. She also noted he was wearing a sweatshirt with what looked like blood stains on it. He looked completely different from what he looked like in high school. I'm sure that his appearance frightened her, so she quickly tried to get in her car and drive away, but Richard pursued her, saying he just wanted to talk. He approached the car and attempted to yank the door open, but the young woman managed to drive away. She told police his name was Richard Chase, and they graduated from the same high school in 1968. Police staked out Richard's apartment, which it turns out was less than a block from where they found Evelyn's car. Not long into their stakeout, police spot Richard leaving with a large box. Unfortunately, Richard sees the police and takes off running for his truck. Judging by his panicked state, police are sure they found the right guy. They proceed to tackle him to the ground, and when they search him, they find his .22 revolver on a shoulder holster, as well as Daniel Meredith's wallet in his back pocket. And that box that he was carrying? It was full of bloody rags that he intended to dispose of. After capturing Richard, police searched his apartment and truck, where they found a plethora of evidence. His truck was full of beer cans and bloody rags, while his apartment contained a bloody blender, newspaper clippings about Ambrose Griffin's death, bloody clothing. All of his eating and drinking utensils were covered in blood, and he also had knives he stole from Teresa Wallen's house. But the icing on the cake here, he had a calendar. Police found a calendar with the dates of the murders marked today. On January 2nd, 1979, the trial of the vampire of Sacramento began, and it lasted 5 months. Richard was charged with 6 counts of first-degree murder. Richard's defense rejected the suggested death penalty on the grounds that Richard was not guilty due to reason of insanity. Astonishingly, though, his insanity plea was rejected. I mean, if anybody deserves an insanity plea, I think it's this guy. Yeah. Anybody that drinks blood of animals, humans, any blood, period, deserves an insanity plea. On May 8th, the jury found Richard guilty on 6 counts of first-degree murder. They sentenced him to die in the gas chamber. Once he got to prison, his fellow inmates were very aware of his crimes, and they were terrified of him. So they were constantly just urging him to... Richard did several interviews with Robert Ressler. He talked about his fear of Nazis and UFOs, and he claimed that it wasn't his fault he killed. He had been forced to. It was the only way to keep himself alive, and he believed that any person would do the same if put in his position. Okay. At one point, he asked Robert to give him access to a radar gun. He wanted to apprehend the Nazi UFOs so the Nazis could stand trial for the murders. But possibly the weirdest of all of what he did in these interviews was he gave Robert a large amount of macaroni and cheese, which Richard had been hoarding in his pants pockets because he believed the prison officials were working with the Nazis and attempting to kill him with poisoned food. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense! Then on December 26, 1980, Richard Trenton Chase was found dead in his cell. He had committed suicide with an overdose of anxiety medication that he had been hoarding. And that is the terrifying story of the vampire of Sacramento. the vampire killer, Dracula, or just Richard Chase, whatever you want to call him. He went by a lot of names. Let me know what you think about this story in the comments. Would you drink blood if your life depended on it? I would not. I can say right now, for sure, I would not drink blood. No, there's no way. Also, I didn't even intend for this whole blood red vibe thing. It just sort of happened. Also, if you have any other serial killers you'd like to hear me talk about, let me know in the comments as well. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!